You've been really busy promoting your new album, This Is the Moment, a collection of Broadway classics, new and old, but they're not really Broadway sounding. They're more of pop tracks, actually. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, Phil Ramone, who I was lucky enough to work with, who is like one of the best producers in the world, the criteria that we laid down right from the get-go was a lot of contemporary songs. You said new and old. It's pretty much new. Mm-hmm. There are a couple ones that date back a couple years, but that was the criteria. Things that are on Broadway now. Aida, Riverdance, of course Jekyll and Hyde just closed, but Seussical, things like that.
Right.
And that's how we came up with a selection of songs. And when he said, I don't want to do a typical Broadway sounding album, and I said, neither do I. You know, let's make it pop, very contemporary. Mm-hmm. And so that's the direction we took.
What was the motivation to going in that direction for you?
Two things come to mind, actually. I've been involved in theater for quite some time now, for the last decade, with Joseph, almost 2,000 shows of Joseph, you know. And
6 years.
Almost 6 years. And there's also the fact you've got some of the best writers in the world writing for Broadway. Mm-hmm. And great melodies, terrific lyrics. And so I thought, you basically have the best writers writing songs for you, or you're selecting from the best writers of the world.
Right. It seems like there's just great ingredients ready for a pop album.
Well, when you think about Broadway music, that's where pop music originally came from.
Mm-hmm.
People were writing for Broadway, way back when. And that evolved into what we now have in the music industry now. So it's basically going back to the beginnings of pop music.
Mm-hmm. How long did the album take to materialize? I understand that it was in the works for quite a while, or at least a desire for a long time for you to do something like this.
Well, it was a very short process, because
Mm-hmm.
you know how albums are made nowadays. I mean, you go in the studio for years, you know, depending upon who you're talking about.
Right.
And you really get cerebral with it, and you get myopic with your vocals, and you punch every syllable, and nowadays it's a question about how many licks and riffs can I put into a verse, you know.
Right.
And Phil and I talked about the process of the way he recorded Frank Sinatra in the last duets albums that Frank did. And he said he'd walk in there and totally prepared, and he gave him 3 takes. And he told Phil, if you can't get it in 3 takes, then we move on to the next song. It's okay. And then Phil said, I'm going to do the same thing to you. And I said, no, man, I got to have more than 3 tracks, you know, to do vocals. And he said, no, you're going to give me 3 performances, and we'll pick the best out of that. And that's the way we approached it. And we did everything live with the band there and the whole bit. Some of the best musicians you possibly can play with. Sean Pelton on drums. Guy is just a genius. Philippe Says on keys. Jeff Mirnoff on guitar, and just the best you can get. And it was such a cool experience to do everything live, because that's the way I used to do it back in the Puppy Love days.
Right.
Don Costa was the arranger, and I had the full orchestra, and we did everything at the same time. So it's kind of, here again, going back to the roots of the way I used to record.
Right. Now, working with Phil Ramone, I mean, there must have been a tremendous experience. Doing it in 3 takes, as you said, is that something that you weren't used to before, in the sense of just sort of performing on the spot for recording albums?
Well, you get into this mode of perfectionism. You know, you've got to sing it just right, and you got to hit the note just right, and you drive yourself crazy. You know, I could name tons of artists right now that get myopic, and you got to be careful of that. Right. Because, I mean, you go back to some of the Marvin Gaye records, or Otis Redding, or even Frank Sinatra. You know, he didn't sing everything perfectly, but the feeling was there, you know, and the emotion was there, and it just kind of sucked you in. Marvin Gaye, you know, he did that with all his stuff. It's like, he's a great singer. It wasn't identically perfect. You turn the radio on now, and everything is perfected, and every syllable is perfect.
Right.
And you lose the feeling, in my opinion. So that's what Phil was after, is that performance, you know?
Right. Did some of the tracks on the album lend themselves to pop easier than others, in sort of transforming from Broadway to a pop album?
Well, when here again you have a producer like Phil Ramone, he can pretty much make anything sound good. But there are a couple songs that come to mind. Seasons of Love from Rent
Right.
was really an easy song to go pop, because it was pretty much that way to begin with.
Right.
Although I listened to Stevie Wonder's version, and I have to admit, I stole a few licks from Stevie on that one. Yeah. Truth that she learned, all the times that he cried. That was a Stevie thing I took.
Sounds like you've got it down. You know, why go back to music? I mean, you had such a nice run on television with the Donny and Marie show. What drew you back to music?
Well, I've done a lot of things, television and whatnot. But when you get right down to it, I've been singing since I was 5. I'm a singer, and that's what I love to do. So I never really was drawn away from music. But the television thing worked in the 70s with Marie.
Right.
And so but that was all down to music too. Of course, there was comedy.
Right.
And then the talk show. I did the talk show for 2 years with her, but I still kept trying to push the music into a talk show.
Right.
But I've wanted to get back into the recording studio for a long time. This is my first album to tour and things like that in 11 years.
Right.
So I've been biting at the bit to get back in the studio.
Right. Well, it seems like you have a tremendous range of work that you do and different artistic projects. I mean, it strikes me as that you're almost a restless entertainer, that you tend to move from project to project, taking on new challenges. What's the motivation among doing those different things?
I like that. You say I'm a restless entertainer. I think there's a different word than restless. Restless connotates that I don't really know what I'm doing, but I just want to try it all. A jack of all trades,
Right.
basically. But if you go back to my training, you know, back in the 60s, it's almost vaudeville in a way.
Right.
You know, I've barbershop harmonies with my brothers, touring every single kind of venue you can imagine. Yes, I do a lot of jumping around, but I call that variety rather than restlessness.
Or hunger.
Or hunger of music. That's another good word for it.
Right.
I mean, last year I guested on Fishbone's album, singing a remake of Shaky Ground. Standing on shaky ground. You know, that's, and then I did a thing with Dweezil Zappa
Right.
years and years ago that kind of shocked everybody, because he was at the Roxy, you know, just performing, probably, but he was up there jamming, and people were going crazy. He said, "Now I'd like to bring out a guest singer, ladies and gentlemen, Donny Osmond," and you could hear a pin drop, because everybody just their jaws hit the floor. What's Donny Osmond doing on stage with Dweezil and Ahmed Zappa?
Right.
Zappa, and. So I walk on stage and I said, "Hi everybody, how you doing?" No response at all. And I turned to Dweezil and I said, "Okay, you ready?" He says, "Yeah." "Ahmed, you ready?" "Yeah." 1, 2, 3, 4! And then we go into this thing, and the place, at first they didn't know what to do. You know, what's this all about? And then all of a sudden the place just erupted, you know. That to me is hunger. It's not restlessness.
Right. Are there some attributes to each project that you do, whether it's television, theater, Broadway, or music? Is there a consistent attribute among all those things that really draws you to a project?
The interpretation of the song. You know, that's the thing that drew me to this project with Phil, is that I wanted to really emote the feelings in this music. Not to get too cerebral here with it or philosophical, but everything I do, even I go clear back to Puppy Love, all right? I remember recording the record, Too Young, Go Away Little Girl, One Bad Apple. It's how you emote the feelings of the song. You know, I remember all the reviews that we got back then. When you're known as a teeny bopper, you know, people just kind of brush it aside because it's useless music. But from a singer's point of view, when you're behind that microphone, you're trying to emote those feelings as much as possible. And those reviews come out, and they rip you apart. It's like ripping part of your soul apart.
Right, because you're attached to the song.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one review, Rolling Stones came out and said, first they started to rip it apart. I can't remember exactly when it was, but they ripped it apart completely. And they said the worst day in rock and roll history was when Donny Osmond was born. And it's like, ouch, babe, you know?
That's
for
right.
for a 15-year-old kid to hear that. I mean, I look back at it now and I laugh at it because I can understand the mentality. If I was writing for Rolling Stone, I probably would have said the same thing too. But the consistency is the fact that you really try to emote the feelings of the song. And because music is music, whether you're doing something with Dweezil Zappa or Fishbone or Marie, you know?
Right.
It's all about the interpretation of the song.
Now, you mentioned Dweezil Zappa and Fishbone, and I know that there was some talk about whether or not television would work for you when you guys did the talk show. Are you attracted to projects that go against a preconceived notion of who you are?
Very much so. I love climbing the next mountain.
Right.
I love doing not just the shock thing, you know, because I'm not a shock singer or like a shock jock like Stern.
Right.
And that's another thing, you know, everybody said, why are you doing Howard Stern's show? Because it's there. I want to climb that mountain, you know? And he turned to me after the interview, or no, he told the press, it was one of his last interviews of 1997, he said, that's my favorite interview of 97. But going there and doing it and announcing I was doing it, people said, you're an idiot. Why are you doing that? Because I like the challenges of certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, the challenge of coming over that hurdle of being a teeny bopper idol and all of that, you talk about climbing a mountain.
You're probably one of the few.
It's a tough mountain to climb.
Now, at what point in your career did you realize that you were Donny Osmond, this sort of pop culture icon? I mean, was there a moment when that idea crystallized for you, that you sort of had a self-awareness?
Yeah, just recently. I did a PBS special in New York a couple weeks ago. It's coming out in March. And the kind of people that came to that show was pretty phenomenal. The age demographics. I saw kids 5 years old all the way up to grandparents. It was predominantly 30 to 40 years old. The puppy love era crowd is what I call them. And the acceptance that they gave me was pretty phenomenal. At that point in time, I thought, wow, you know, this is pretty exciting. It's been a challenge to be Donny Osmond, you know, through the 80s. It was a horrible decade for me. Because the 70s was, you know, that's the success of the Donny and Marie show, was the Puppy Love, One Bad Apple. That was a fine decade. But getting through the 80s was really, really tough. And it took a big toll on my personal psyche, basically, you know. I didn't want to be me. I did everything to get away from the whole Donny and Marie thing. But when I did this special, I decided I'm going to sing Puppy Love as well as the new music. But I'm going to do it right, do it legit. And it was a blast because they accepted it.
That's amazing. And
I had the time of my life, as a matter of fact, and I told Craig Kilborn this story the other night. He said, tell me about the special. And I said, I was having the time of my life, just enjoying myself on stage. And there's this Swedish guy, and I hope I don't offend any Swedish people out there, but they don't say they're J's. Like, jump would be yump, you know? And after the show, he came up to me, you had a wonderful time on stage. And I said, yes, I really had a great, great time. He said, oh, I saw it in your face. Make sure you put it in your urinal. And I thought, where? And he says, your urinal. And I said, well, it all eventually gets there anyway. And I was having a great time that night. It was pretty obvious.
You know, you're now in this, you know, this sort of later stage in your career. You've been a child star. You've been a teenage pinup. Is there any particular stage of your career so far to this point that's been more rewarding than the others, or has been the most rewarding?
Well, I look back at certain peaks. I didn't appreciate the success of One Bad Apple when it was happening, but it was fun. The whole teeny bopper thing, I look at NSYNC and Britney and the hysteria that's going on there. That was fun, but I didn't really appreciate it at the time. I look at the success of the Donny Marie show, the 70s, and I started to appreciate that. But I'd have to say, when Soldier of Love hit in '89,
right,
That was a big moment for me, but I've never been more comfortable within myself, my own skin, professionally and personally, than I am right now. You know, some people may not like this record, but that's up to them. I had the greatest time of my life recording this. So as far as I'm concerned, it's already successful for me because I did it. And I worked with Phil. And I have a record company that's so behind it. I've never had the kind of support that I've had now. And so right now is a great time in my life.
Right. What was it like seeing your life and your family interpreted on film just recently, Behind the Smiles?
Oh, you know, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, you haven't?
I haven't seen that movie. I TiVoed it.
Right.
But I haven't had a chance to go look at it.
But you participated in
I saw the very end, yeah, that because
Right.
they sent me a kind of a rough clip of how it works, and a couple rough cuts of some of the stuff they did, and I thought needs a little work, and some of the acting. But they said, oh, well, it'll get better. So I can hardly wait to see the movie to see how it turned out. I mean, I've talked to people that some people really liked it, and some people really hated it. You know, so I'll give you my reaction when I see it.
You have to email me.
I'll email you.
Now, you know, just doing research on your career and looking at all the materials, it seems that you're, in many ways, a really old-fashioned entertainer.
Mm.
You do everything. Do you think that idea, that notion of being an entertainer, a well-rounded entertainer, is a fading one? Or?
I think it's something that's coming around again.
Mm-hmm.
I think people have specialized in certain things, and radio has proven that, because radio has been fragmented so much. I think we're going to come into a period of time where people want that, not variety in the way it used to be, not like the Donny and Marie show of the 70s, but something different, something else. It's human nature. People get tired of a certain genre, and I think we're in the next 5 years or so, we're headed for something a little more well-rounded, something that people will say, well, yeah, I can sing that style of music too, and they're not afraid of an image, you know, so I've got to be this, and otherwise I'm not cool. I think that cool factor is going to go away to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
I may be completely wrong, but that's my gut feeling, that you'll always have that type of feeling, oh, I've got to do this or else people won't accept me, and I've got to do that. I think that's going to break through.
You have 5 boys.
Yeah.
Have any of them considered following your footsteps in entertainment?
My oldest doesn't really want anything to do with the business, and
Mm-hmm.
I totally support that. He said, I've seen how hard it is, and the price you have to pay for certain things, and I'd rather not go through that.
Right.
And my second son really loves it. He's a great guitar player, and he's formed a few bands. He's gone through his punk phase and emo phase, and he's a great writer, and so I see him possibly getting into it. My third son's got a great voice.
Mm-hmm.
He's taking voice lessons, but nothing serious yet. And if it's something they want to do, then by all means I'll support it. I won't push it, but I'll support it.
If there's something that you could, some wisdom you could impart
Yeah.
to them, what would that be for in pursuing?
Run away!
Stop. Right.
No, I mean, it's a great business.
Yeah.
It's a business of extremes, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You can, because I've been lucky enough to have a 38-year career. I mean, if you've got a 5-year career, you're fortunate.
Right.
I'm one of the very lucky few, and I recognize that. So, you know, set your goals high, but you know, it's a tough business to get noticed, because there's so many people out there trying to be noticed, and they have an advantage probably because of a name, but at the end of the day, it's your music. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's your talent. You can't survive on just a name, although a lot of people try right now. But that's why maybe they have short careers, because eventually they don't have anything to support it. That supports my theory of more of a well-rounded entertainer. He says, yeah, I can do that. I can do that.
Right.
That's why I jump around, and I'd like to do a duet with, let's see, I think I'll call it Metallica. I'd love to do a cover on Sad But True, you know?
Right, right.
Donny Osmond does Sad But True.
That would be multiple tones.
Yeah.
Right there. Well, thank you for taking your time out.
My
I know
pleasure.
you're really busy, and we'll be looking forward to This Is the Moment, your new album.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.